Hi, I'm Cindi McGee, and you're watching Polymer Clay TV. Today's veneer was inspired by this multicolored feather fabric that I found online. The first step was to condition and roll some Primo Sculpey Black to a setting number 3 on my clay machine. To create the feathers, I'm using my Cindi's Peacock silkscreen from createalong.com, and I'm going to use 2 of the feathers. Place it orange side down against the clay sheet, and I like to give it a little roll just to make sure that it's going to stay in place. And then I'm silk screening with some white paint. This is DecoArt Americana Multi-Surface Satin in Cotton Ball. It's a little thicker than some acrylics, and it silk screens really well. Carefully lift it up and go ahead and move your screen to another section of that clay sheet and continue silk screening. You want to screen several of these on the sheet in different directions in a random pattern. Once you've got them placed where you want them, go ahead and wash that silk screen right away so that it's ready for use next time, and we'll let this first layer dry. That layer's dry, I'm going to come back and silk screen around those with the center feather and the same white paint. Again, I'm going to silk screen them in different directions and make it all rather random. Be sure to wash that silk screen again and let all of these feathers completely dry before proceeding to the next step. To add the polychrome multicolor effect to the feathers, I'm going to be using an assortment of PanPastels. All of the colors I'm using are inspired by this original fabric. To begin on the first set of feathers, I'm using 2 shades of green. This is Permanent Green and Permanent Green Tint. You can substitute any of these colors as you need to based on what you have on hand. Start with the paler shade of green and begin applying it over the paint on the lower portion of the feathers that you silk screened first. You want it beneath the eye area. And you want to go in and add bits of the darker green here and there. It's supposed to be different shades of the green, and it's okay for it to go through onto that black beneath. That's the effect that we want too. To add those pinky purple touches that are in that original fabric, I'm using some magenta PanPastel in a really fine applicator, and I'm just going to add it over some of the individual feather pieces on that bottom piece of those first feathers. For the eye of the feather, I started with a pale yellow and covered the entire eye of the feather with it first. Then came back with some orange and used that around the outside where the decorative area is, and on that decorative area in the very center. And lastly, I came back with the permanent red, and I'm going to go around that eye and on all of those feathers around it to the top of the feather. Repeat these steps on all of the feathers that are the same as this one. For the second set of feathers, I'm starting with this yellow ochre tint. You just want sort of a pale tan color for a base layer, and apply it over the surface of the white on those second set of feathers that you created. Next, I'm using some phthalo blue, and I'm going to add it in some areas over that tan that we used. Then I added just a touch of turquoise here and there to those feathers. Lastly, I'm using some raw umber to add some sections on those blue feathers, mimicking that original fabric. If you look at that original fabric, the base layer is sort of muted, and to get that effect, I started with some colorless blender and basically went over the entire surface, sort of muting and blending those colors just a little bit and softening it all. And to get that sort of in the shadows effect of that first layer, I'm using some Black Pearl Ultrafine, and again going over the entire surface with a very light touch of it. You don't want to completely obliviate those colors that you started with, but you want to make them sort of a background shadowy kind of effect. All right, now it's time for the top layer. We're going to repeat the entire set of steps, starting with the first feather and allowing them to overlap those feathers beneath. Do several of these, wash your silk screen, let them dry. Do several of the next feather, wash your silk screen, let them dry, and then apply the colors in the exact same way that you did that base layer, except we're not going to use the colorless blender, and we're not going to use that black ultra fine because we want this top layer to be vibrant. And I think that's about as close as I can get to that original pattern in that fabric. I'm going to make some pendants with my veneer. I used an assortment of cutters, many of them from Create Along and one of my round cutters, to cut the first basic shapes. And I wanted to pair those shapes with some textured clay, so I've rolled some more of the Primo Black to a setting 1 this time, and I'm using this Water Spouts texture sheet from Create Along to add some texture to the surface. To highlight that texture, I'm using some DecoArt Metallic Luster, and this is Black Shimmer. And I'm just going to use my fingertip and apply it very lightly over the surface to highlight the texture. Then I added my feather sections and created my pendants, and I used some Hot Fix cabochons to add a little bit of dimensional accent to some of them here and there, and they're ready to go into the oven. Bake them according to the manufacturer's instructions. For more inspiration, join our Polymer Clay Tribe Facebook page. Over 17,000 members sharing projects every day. For lots more creative polymer clay ideas, visit the Polymer Clay TV blog.